Okay, our next speaker, Alex Figueroa from Corning Incorporated. He's going to do a technical explanation of fiber for everyone. And he graduated in 2005 from Florida Atlantic University with a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. After graduating from FAU, Alex commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps. Thank you, Alex. Serving over 7 years of active service. He piloted the FA-18 Hornet and served as an intelligence officer during a combat deployment in Afghanistan to the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. Alex joined Corning Optical Communications as a sales engineer in May of 2013 and resides in Powell, Ohio with his wife and 2 children. Maybe Alex.
Can you hear me in the back?
Yeah.
Okay. Timothy, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. I appreciate your time. The intent here this morning is going to be to present fiber optic cable, basically just a fiber optic 101, if you will. And I'm just going to provide surface level detail. Please feel free to ask any questions throughout the portion of the presentation. Don't feel like you're disrupting my flow here, as that's not the case whatsoever. So I'm with Corning Optical Communications, as Tim mentioned. We invented fiber optic technology, basically, and made it practical back in 1970. Around 1979 is really when we started to utilize it within the industry, predominantly in the carrier space, right? The Verizons of the world, the AT&Ts, Bell. We are a glass company, and that's what our roots are in, which makes sense with fiber optic technology. Back in Thomas Edison light bulb, that was Corning glass, okay? So we go back over 164 years, and that's where we hang our hat, that's all we do. So again, the intent, fiber optic 101. I'm going to show you a quick video that just gives you a sneak peek as to fiber and what it can do for you in a municipality type of setting, if you will.
Video on demand, cloud computing, distance learning, music streaming, online gaming, and social networks have transformed the way we live, work, and play. These are just some of the many new technological advances that make our lives easier. As these conveniences develop into a bigger part of our lives, our broadband network infrastructure becomes even more important. Having a future-proof broadband network will provide the foundation you need to take advantage of new products as they become available. In 1970, Corning revolutionized telecommunications networks around the world by inventing the first high-purity, low-loss optical fiber. Fiber optics has almost limitless carrying capacity, while other mediums, like the ones in most broadband networks, have additional constraints. DSL and cable modems can provide relatively fast internet service and are common today. But only fiber, more than 50 times faster than DSL or cable, supplies virtually unlimited bandwidth that can go beyond the basics to offer life-enhancing applications. Fiber provides a fast, reliable connection, making fiber a great value for families. It is more secure than any other broadband technology and requires less equipment, power, and maintenance, making fiber to the home the green, environmentally friendly choice. Because of increased speed and dependability, consumers with fiber networks are able to seamlessly work from home. There's more to come, because Corning's innovations will enable this journey to continue. When you want information on fiber to the home, it makes sense to ask the company that invented fiber for communications.
Okay, so Corning invented glass, again, back in 1970. One facility in Concord, North Carolina makes about 85% of the world's glass. Just to give you an idea of how much fiber optic glass we make, and we make more than 95% of the world's glass today. We also cable it, obviously, and provide all the components along to enable the connection from switch to switch, if you will. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is going to be the overview as to what I'm going to discuss. I'll end at fiber performance and benefits today. I'm not going to bore you with all the other details. These are presentations that we give to customers across the industry, in enterprise space and in the carrier space. with regards to fiber optic 101. These are all the different applications that we touch. Local area network within, we were just talking about Cardinal Health, Ohio Health. Those are customers that utilize fiber optic glass in their backbone, right? So from telecom room to other rooms within the buildings themselves. So basically the backbone of the building is all fiber optic glass. The fiber, and obviously the fiber rings connect these buildings. So these are building-to-building connections that utilize fiber. Within the building there's also fiber. And then data center spaces are predominantly fiber-based now. So the switches and all the gear that's utilized within the data center space today is predominantly fiber. There is still some copper use. The problem that you get with copper is just you're limited by a couple things, bandwidth and distance. So that's what fiber is going to enable you to be able to project, is unlimited bandwidth and virtually not unlimited distance. You're still limited there. However, you're never going to be unlimited with regards to bandwidth itself. Real quick, we have traffic light signals. We got a project going on currently throughout the city of Columbus. It's the ITS project that the city of Columbus has. They're in phase C currently. It's all utilizes completely 100% fiber optic glass and obviously the cable itself. So glass is used not just in the local area network, the data center, building-to-building backbone environment, but it's also used to connect traffic light signals. General definition for fiber optics. The general definition is transmitting information in the form of light through a transparent medium. In our world, it's glass, okay? Mediums, there's various types of mediums. If you use Wi-Fi, the medium to carry RF signals is air, okay? In Navy, they listen to sonar. The medium to carry sound in water, the medium to carry sound is water in Navy applications, right? And in our application, the medium to carry light is glass, okay? So that is predominantly how and what fiber optic is, and here's an illustration as to what it looks like. Now, I'm going to show you in the next slide the electromagnetic spectrum. What this here points to is what it looks like in the form of light that's visual to the human eye, okay? So you have an LED type of element, or laser, that's propagating light, so otherwise known as a transmitter, okay, through the fiber optic glass, and what you need is total internal reflection. You want that light to stay within the glass, and that's where the technology is, right? Because it is extremely hard to keep light in glass without it refracting or escaping from the glass itself. Otherwise, that light is not going to get to the other end, which is what you need for a switch to be able to record data, right? Ones and zeros. So this is the electromagnetic spectrum, what we learned in grade school, right? So our eyes visually can see the wavelengths from 420 nanometers out to 700 nanometers. Fiber optics uses infrared, okay? So we're in the infrared portion of the spectrum, multi-mode and single mode being two different modes of glass that we utilize. In this application that you will be exploring, we're looking at single mode glass. So you're looking at the 1310 to 1625 nanometer range of the electromagnetic spectrum. What does that mean? It means that it's not visual to the human eye. So a safety brief that we give to contractors out there when we're teaching them about fiber optics and installing is one of the things you never want to do when you're looking at a fiber optic cable. If you don't know whether it's connected on the other end, don't look at the end of that fiber optic cable, because otherwise it's going to burn your retina, okay? So it's always a safety precaution that we put out to installers predominantly, right? Okay, here's what I think is one of the most amazing things about fiber optic glass is single mode is 8.3 microns in diameter, okay? 8.3 microns in diameter, just to put it into perspective, is your human hair is about 70 to 80 microns in diameter. So single mode is about 1/10 of the diameter of a human hair, yet it is unlimited as far as how much bandwidth it can carry. That's pretty remarkable. So what that tells you is you're going to be future-proof as long as transmitters in the industry won't be able to test the bandwidth limitations. And currently, practically and theoretically, there is no transmitter, there is no light out there that can turn on and off fast enough and exceed the limits of single mode glass. So currently, you're never going to be limited by fiber optic glass with the amount of bandwidth that you can deliver. And this just shows you human hair, right, versus that of an optical fiber. I understand you can see that, but it just gives you a pretty neat explanation. So this is optical fiber. This is somewhat of a misnomer in that the next slide here, 8 microns in diameter, the core, which is where the light travels, is 8.3 microns in diameter, okay? But there's 3 components to fiber optic glass. That's the 3 C's, the core, the cladding, and the coating. The only 2 pieces of the 3 C's, if you will, that are glass are the core and the cladding. You need the core, obviously, is where the light is traveling, the infrared light is traveling through. The cladding is what enables that light to stay within the core. So it's basically like a mirror, if you will, right? And it's just maintaining that light, and it's reflecting the light to keep it within the core.
What is it made of?
Germanium. And there's another component, I mean, there's several chemical components to the glass itself, but the preponderant chemical component is germanium.
And the core is silicon dioxide, right?
I'm sorry?
The core is silicon dioxide.
Silicon dioxide, that's right. So you got the core, 8 microns in diameter, the cladding, which is 125 microns in diameter, and then those are the 2 pieces of glass, and then the coating, which the entire intent of coating is just the outside barrier here, is just for protection of the glass itself, okay? And that's an acrylic plastic. So there's folks out there that are terminating and splicing fiber optics, right? And they think they get to the glass, when in reality, they're splicing onto what is plastic, and there's a lot of issues with contractors, if you will, sometimes, that aren't fully trained up, that don't understand that they have to strip 250 microns off to get to the glass itself, which is what you need to get a nice cohesive fusion splice of glass. And this is just a visual representation as to what I've already been speaking to here, where you get the light, if you will, you get the total internal reflection within the core due to the cladding, and that's all the slide was meant for. Bandwidth, which I've spoken to quite a bit, is just the capacity of a medium to carry information over a distance, right? So how much data can I carry and how far? Well, single mode, again, as I mentioned, is unlimited. So you can get 100 gigs over single mode glass. You can get 400 gigs or 1 terabit over single mode glass. At my home, I know I got Wi-Fi, and I'm getting 20 megabits, right? 20 megabits download. I think I get a total of 22 megabits. You get 20 download, and the carriers will only give you 1 or 2 upload. Well, we're talking 400 gigs, 1 terabit that you can deliver easily over single mode glass. And distances, you're looking at 70 kilometers out to 150 kilometers before you have to introduce a repeater, basically, due to signal loss of the glass over those distances. And actually, the last video I'll show you here gives you a really nice explanation as to what that looks like, the signal loss over a distance. 3 different types of optical sources. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but the 3 main optical sources are LED, okay, a VCSEL, which is a vertical cavity surface emitting laser. And for what we're looking at as far as single mode, these 2 are not applicable, okay? We're looking at lasers, which are, from a cost standpoint, a bit more in cost, but that's because you want to deliver unlimited bandwidth, right? And you want to deliver it long distances. So, what you're looking at is lasers, and lasers are used over single mode glass. That 8.3 micron core glass utilizes the lasers. When you get to 50 micron core glass, that's where you get the VCSELs, and 62.5 you're looking at LEDs. Yes, sir?
Is the light intensity of the laser that you're talking about comparable to, say, a pointer?
No,
Much brighter?
well, not brighter, because it's
Much more
infrared.
powerful?
Well, excuse me?
Much more intense?
Much more intense, exactly.
Okay, 10?
We're looking at like, one of these lasers will run you about $10,000 to $15,000 a pop.
I'm thinking about the intensity of the light.
The intensity of the light, it is, from a wavelength standpoint, much more intense. The human eye just can't pick it up
Okay.
because it's infrared, right? So it's
Yeah.
invisible. Now, you don't want to look at it at the end of one of those fiber optic glasses, because if you don't know whether it's connected on the other end, you can quickly burn your retina.
So what other,
Yes?
real quick, just what other, type of applications does the LED and the VCSEL, what are they appropriate for?
So, great question. LEDs, predominantly we see LEDs in legacy equipment where you don't need to deliver so much bandwidth over long distances. Manufacturing environments, harsh environments utilize LEDs. Basically, the light turns on and turns off at a slower rate than that of a laser. A laser can turn on and off, flicker on and off, so that the electronics can record ones and zeros extremely quick. LED doesn't have that kind of capability, so therefore you're not able to deliver as much data packets on an LED optic. VCSEL, predominantly, so it's a hybrid, basically, laser, just a cheaper cost laser, and predominantly you'll see VCSEL, vertical cavity surface emitting lasers, in the data center environment, because there's a significant amount of ports that are being utilized. So from a cost standpoint, here's the other thing: single mode glass is much cheaper in cost than multi-mode glass. There's much more engineering involved to manufacture multi-mode glass. You can't get the same distance out of multi-mode glass and bandwidth that you can get out of single mode glass. So then the question is, well, hold on a second, why don't we just use single mode glass in all the time? The answer is the optics. The lasers are much more expensive than the VCSELs are. In the data center spaces, where you're using like a Cisco Nexus 7000 series switch, let's say, you're talking 576 fibers, okay, so 288 ports. And when you start doing the cost analysis of lighting up 288 ports from, you know, your Cisco core switch to an aggregation switch to an access switch, where you have multiple ports, hundreds of ports, right? The cost curve really comes to fruition in this application, where it makes sense to go with a multi-mode glass. You don't need to deliver so much data over a very long distance because you're in a controlled data space environment. But you just have so many more connections, so many more ports that you have to light up, that it just makes sense to use a multi-mode glass with a VCSEL. Great question, though. Any other questions? Yes?
So just to clarify the terminology, that VCSEL might be used for that kind of grand central station in a data center where so many connections are getting switched over and routing into different directions?
Exactly. Yeah. You know, when you're talking about a fiber ring, you were saying 48 fibers. Obviously, in those 48 fibers, you're running over very long distances, miles, right, or kilometers. There you need to use single mode. And by the way, you're not using, there's not that many ports that are being lit up, okay? So from a cost standpoint, when you start to run that much cable, it makes sense to go with a laser type of optic that you can get much more data and much more distance out of than using a VCSEL type glass over a 50 micron core glass diameter. Clear as mud? Okay, that pretty much concludes the presentation. We're going to end it with a video here, which will basically visually depict everything that I've been speaking to. If you got any other questions at all, feel free to ask after the conclusion of the video.
With nearly 2 billion kilometers deployed around the world, optical fiber is the backbone of today's most advanced telecommunications networks. Fiber is assembled into optical cables that link continents, cities, and neighborhoods around the world. This thin, flexible strand of ultra-pure glass is capable of carrying voice, data, and video information in the form of light signals at very high speeds. Let's take a closer look at this revolutionary transmission medium. Optical fiber is very thin. One strand is about the diameter of a human hair. It is comprised of two basic elements made of glass, the core and the cladding. The core, the center part of the fiber, is the area through which the light signals are transmitted. The cladding layer completely surrounds the core, keeping the light from escaping. There are two different types of fiber, single mode and multi-mode. Single mode fiber has a small core diameter designed to carry light in a single path over long distances. It has high information carrying capacity and low attenuation, and is the most widely deployed optical fiber in the world. Multi-mode fiber has a larger core, which allows light to travel down many paths simultaneously. Typically, multi-mode fiber is deployed in data centers, local area networks, and storage area networks, where it is more cost-effective than single-mode fiber. Corning invented the first low-loss fiber in 1970 and has continued to deliver significant performance improvements for the past 40 years through continuous innovation. Three key attributes that can limit the speed or information carrying capacity of the optical fiber are attenuation, dispersion, and bend-induced loss in the form of macrobending and microbending performance. Attenuation refers to signal loss along the length of the fiber. In this illustration, the light gets dimmer as it travels down the fiber. It can be caused by the quality of the glass itself, or can be induced by bending. Dispersion is the distortion of a signal along the fiber length. This occurs because different spectral components of the optical signal in the optical fiber travel at different speeds. In this example, different wavelengths are represented by the red and yellow light. Macrobending and microbending are optical effects that occur when the fiber is bent from a straight axis. Microbending is an attenuation increase caused by high-frequency, small-radius bends along the length of the fiber. Macrobending is the attenuation associated with bending or wrapping the fiber. Both of these conditions can allow light to leak out of the fiber, meaning some of the original signal is lost. Using a bend-insensitive fiber like Corning Clear Curve single-mode or multi-mode fiber will greatly reduce the loss caused by macrobending. Optical fibers operate on the principle of total internal reflection, which keeps the light within the core and guides it down the length of the fiber. Refraction refers to the bending of light as it passes from one substance to another. The glass used in the fiber's core has a higher refractive index than the glass used in the cladding, so that the light can be trapped in the core by reflection at the cladding interface, as it propagates down the length of the fiber. Two additional characteristics of single-mode fiber that are important are cutoff wavelength and mode field diameter. Cutoff wavelength is the wavelength above which a fiber will support only a single mode. Wavelengths below the cutoff support two or more modes. The cutoff wavelength is determined by the fiber's refractive index profile, the length and bend of the fiber, as well as the cabling process and deployment conditions encountered during use. In a single-mode fiber, some of the optical power is actually guided outside the core. In fact, as much as 30% of the light propagates in the cladding layer of some fibers. The mode field diameter defines the size of the optical power distribution in the fiber. Multi-mode fiber has two important characteristics: numerical aperture and core size. Numerical aperture is the measure of the angular range of acceptance of light into a fiber. The angle over which a fiber accepts light depends on the refractive indices of the core and cladding glass. Core diameter is a fundamental design parameter of multi-mode optical fiber. The larger the core, the more modes of light can propagate through the fiber. Multi-mode fiber has a much larger core size than single-mode fiber. Optical fiber is strong, flexible, and reliable. Inch for inch, it's stronger than steel and more durable than copper. Fiber offers excellent signal performance over a wide range of environmental conditions. Since fiber carries light instead of electricity, it is unsusceptible to lightning strikes or electrical faults, and, unlike copper, it does not corrode or rust. As a result, fiber reduces maintenance costs and has a proven record of reliability in the field. In fact, it is common for customers to report to Corning that cables installed in the late 1970s or early 1980s are still in use today. Optical fiber is cost-effective, durable, and scalable, has low attenuation, and it features the superior transmission quality needed for high-speed transmission of voice, data, and video in today's leading applications. To learn more, visit our website or contact your Corning account representative.
Sir?
A couple of quick questions. Do I need new equipment at my house to handle this? And the second question is, are you gonna have a bottleneck show up when you go from fiber to the copper and my Cat 5 cables?
As far as the equipment is concerned, I don't know the answer to the
You're just
equipment
you're
as
just a
far as
cable
the
guy,
fiber to
so
the home, yeah.
The following content is provided
Somebody
under a
else may
Creative
have
Commons
a better
license.
answer to that question.
Your support will help MIT
How about a
Open
bottleneck?
Courseware continue to offer high-quality
If I
educational
go from fiber
resources
to
for
cable
free.
to
Yeah.
To
copper,
make a donate,
So
Does
if
my
you're
speed
delivering
change?
fiber direct to the home, you should have no bottleneck there, right? I mean, you're gonna.
after it gets to the home, I've got Ethernet cable going to my computer though.
Yeah, so,
Typically, there's what's called a transceiver. Typically, there's a transceiver that does the translation from fiber to Ethernet.
So I need a new piece of equipment.
Or it'll be either a new piece of equipment or it'll be built in as part of the fiber drop. Because people aren't going to have optical transceivers in their house typically. Maybe in a business.
I think one of our upcoming speakers can also
Yeah,
address that
that'd be
issue.
great.
any other questions?
Thank you so much, Alex.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Our next speaker, Deb Socia, is the Executive Director of Next Century Cities. And prior to her role as the Executive Director, Deb was the Executive Director of the Tech Goes Home program, whose mission was to ensure digital equity. The program was selected as the Computer World 2011 Laureate, was awarded the Public Technology Institute's 2011 Solutions Award, and the 2009 Verizon Tech Savvy Award, as well as being mentioned as an exemplary program in several national publications. I think she's online. Hello, Deb. It's all yours.
Can you hear me? Okay, thanks. Thanks so much for inviting me to participate today. I'm talking to you from my office in Washington, D.C. It's been an honor to connect with Yellow Springs and to hear about your intent to bring broadband to your community. As an organization, Next Century Cities launched last October with 32 member cities, and I'm pleased to say we're now 87 cities strong, which says something about the need for our communities to have this kind of support and opportunity. Our cities vary in size from, on the small side, tiny communities like Leverett, Massachusetts, that have a total of 600 housing units, to many at your size that are somewhere in the 2,000 range, all the way up to Los Angeles, which has over 3 million housing units. Each has their own complexities. They're urban, suburban and rural, progressive, conservative, issues with can they take on debt? Do they want to take on debt? What's the terrain look like? What's the density? Do we own or manage an electric utility? And all of those things create a circumstance where there is no one simple cookie cutter method to make this happen, as I'm sure you're finding out as you go through this process. We often say there are as many pathways as there are cities. So all of our cities have agreed to a set of common principles for some reason. My PowerPoint, there we go. You can see our members are from all across the country. And here are the principles that all entities, yes?
Sorry to interrupt you. There's an option on your screen to share your...
Oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot to click. I actually cannot see that option. It worked yesterday, sorry. I apologize.
Okay, now, if that's made you presenter, you should see that pop up.
I did see it. Okay. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second here. can't seem to see it. My apologies.
Okay. Well, please go ahead, and we will simply, make do, okay?
Okay, my apologies, but can't seem to figure that out, and I apologize.
Okay, there's no problem.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just found it.
All right. Excellent.
Technology glitch, why would that ever happen? So here's the map of where we have cities, so you can see that we're pretty much everywhere in the country. We've got a couple of states that we are still looking at, sort of central U.S. But here are the principles that everybody agreed to. High-speed internet is necessary infrastructure. At this point in time, we feel like this is an issue that's become clearer across the country. Still could use more elevation nationally, and really we continue to push on this issue and encourage people to understand that a city's choice is to move forward on this infrastructure or to lose ground rapidly to their neighbors. The internet is nonpartisan, which we at the local level totally get, but is not always clear to other folks. Communities must enjoy self-determination, and I heard Chris talk earlier about CLIC, the Coalition of Local Internet Choice, and that's really a big issue for them, that cities should get to pick how and what they do to move forward. The internet is a community-wide endeavor. Everybody should be able to be involved. Meaningful competition drives progress, which I think is very clear when you look at what's happened in some of the Google cities. So as soon as Google mentions they're going to go to a city, the incumbents lower their prices and up their speed. Competition matters. And I did hear Chris talk a little bit about how the difficulty that folks have sometimes with incumbents when when the city is building their own network. And just so you know, our webinar for May is actually on that topic. So we'll have to make sure that you are able to view that and participate. And then our last one is collaboration benefits all. And it seems like your community has a great sense of how important it is to work together and to speak with one voice.
Another one.
So, why do we work primarily with local government as opposed to state and federal? Our focus on the local level is purposeful because that's where the action is happening. This is where folks are making a difference. This is where there is no room for party politics and where what matters is providing the community what they need to be successful, to have a good quality of life, and to be viable into the future. The effort to provide broadband today, as I'm sure you've heard referred to before, it's not so different than the effort to electrify the country in the 30s and 40s, right? Larger cities got investment from private industry who saw the opportunity to profit because they had a dense population and it was inexpensive to deploy. The rural areas were largely unserved. So creative problem solving helped to spread the availability of electricity. And like in the 30s and 40s, cities know they can't wait for someone else to step up and solve their problems. At this point, it's imperative that cities make decisions that help them reach the goal of fast, affordable, and reliable broadband. Yellow Springs, as a municipal electric, certainly understands the role of local government in the electrification of America. And as a result of having your own utility, you have a significant advantage over those who do not manage a utility. You have a trusted organization, you have available fiber assets, and you have a management system in place, much like Chattanooga did with EPB in advance of building their system. And, for a lot of our cities, they wish there were a simple, easy solution. And some people think, well, if only Google would come, right? We might like to have Google intercede and build us a gig, but we're pragmatic enough to know that's pretty unlikely. And many believe that self-reliance is preferable anyway. And one thing's for certain, we're smart enough to know we can't stand still. Cities who are progressing will be passing by other communities that do not embrace the opportunity. Smart leaders are pushing forward, finding solutions and innovating. And a few days ago, I read a really interesting article about a city named Hoon. It's a small Spanish town that runs on Twitter. It's an amazing solution for a small town issue. The police officer, the mayor, everyone's on Twitter. Citizens tweet concerns and get rapid responses. And one example of this is on the screen. So you may not be able to read it, but the first is a tweet from a citizen saying the street lamp is out on this street. And then the mayor says back, thanks for letting us know. Tomorrow, when he names the electrician's Twitter handle, we'll replace the broken street lamp, and they have a hashtag, Hoon gets moving. Then the next day, the electrician fixes it, tweets a picture of it, and says, here it is, it's working. So, a very interesting solution to a problem. And in fact, they talked about the police officer being on Twitter, and that's how he received information. And so they said, what happens when you go home and turn off your phone? He said, oh, it's okay, it's a small town, they all know where I live. So apparently they show up. But, you know, that's how small towns manage this, right? They figure out a solution. They have a problem, they find a solution. And if that solution isn't the perfect solution, they try again and again, and they iterate until they figure it out. So why is all this happening at the local level? Because leaders at the local level are your neighbors. You see them in the grocery store, at the kids' soccer game, maybe at church. You might even work together, since a lot of small town leaders are part-time in their role. There's a level of accountability that doesn't exist at any other level in government. For some at the state and federal level, the issues of the local community can be one or two steps removed. That's a generalization, I realize, but one that rings true for some. And there are state laws that limit choice, and that's an example of this dilemma, and I know Chris mentioned it earlier. But for example, in Tennessee, there are laws that limit the local broadband expansion. So Chattanooga could support its neighbors who are currently living on dial-up and satellite, which is very poor and very expensive. No one wants to build out to these more rural communities that are their neighbors, but the law prevents Chattanooga from filling that need. That is not an okay thing for our cities to have to deal with. And we all know that that is a partisan issue at the state level, and it's also, as you know, always, everything seems to be a partisan issue at the federal level. Next century cities, we really don't believe it should be a partisan issue, in any more so than filling a pothole or fixing a street light. None of those should be partisan issues. So we look to partner with our cities to eliminate barriers that limit your ability to move forward. We want to elevate your voice and your progress, and we want to help make this issue a priority nationwide. It's fabulous you're on the leading edge of this work, and we will look to you to share what you know and what you learn as you move forward. And I hope, too, that you will take advantage of the many folks in the network that actually have gotten a little bit further ahead, like the Chattanoogas and the Santa Monicas, and using those opportunities to learn from one another. I'm sure there are folks who will ask, why do we need fast, affordable, reliable internet? It's interesting, one of our cities contacted me yesterday. They're building a gig, and the incumbent is going from citizen to citizen saying, you don't need more than 10 megabits down. Don't let them spend your money to build this network. And 10 megabits down per second is not even at the speed that the FCC considers to be broadband. FCC says broadband is 25 megabits down. And so being prepared for that pushback is important, and understanding the reasons that this is necessary infrastructure can be helpful to you. I'm sure you've heard all of these, but there was a great article this week actually about how telehealth is actually being held back by the level of connectivity in some of the communities in our country. It will increase efficiency, it will decrease costs, and we've got to have a gig to do it. In education, which is a lot of my background, I love the opportunity for kids to do things like take courses that are not available locally. For example, my son, when he was in high school, wanted to take Spanish 5. There were not enough children to run a class in that small community. Had he been in high school today, he could have taken one online and absolutely still gotten to Spanish 5. Certainly with government officials, it's so helpful to think about how e-government can increase your efficiency. It's important to think about civic engagement and participatory democracy, like the Hoon example. How do citizens impact decision-making, share information, how do you crowdsource solutions? You know, one problem that one of our cities, Boston, had that was interesting, I'm sure you all heard about the snow they got this year. There were 9 feet of snow, and one of the issues was they couldn't find I can't even think of the word. They had to dig out the fire plug so the firemen could come in and if there were a fire. And so they crowdsourced it and had people adopt the fire hydrant. And so you adopt the fire hydrant in front of your house and you dig it out every time it snows. Great solution to the problem that did not cost the city a penny. So finding those are really helpful. I think one of the things that I've heard about a lot lately that I hadn't realized would be such a big issue is the issue of real estate. And I've heard estimates of between 3 and 7% increase in real estate prices in communities that have a gig. That's a huge incentive. Even if you as an individual homeowner are not so interested in what a gig can do for you personally, understanding how it impacts your ability to increase the cost of your home is certainly an incentive. And you know, all of these reasons are important, but we can't forget how important it is also to have this opportunity for entertainment. You know, we heard Chris talking about how he streams Netflix. Lots of people are now using this for entertainment, and it is becoming a quality of life issue. I want to say that as a person who's not an engineer, I'm not, you'll hear from Sandy Derby Peetzold, who is that rare individual who is both an engineer and a city official. He's brilliant, but you don't have to be an engineer to help make this work. What you have to be is dedicated, caring, attentive. You have to hire the right people, and you have to stay on top of it. But you don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to understand every piece of this. You just got to have the right people on board. Building fast, affordable, and reliable internet is a great step forward for any community that seeks to improve the quality of life of its citizens, and I congratulate you for making that decision. I think one of the important things to remember, Chris also mentioned, is that when you are doing this work, you care about more than just a profit. You care about changing the way that your city works. You care about growing businesses. You care about improving student achievement. You care about citizen engagement. You care about making Yellow Springs a better place to live. That doesn't happen with the providers who come in and build for you. When you take care of that business yourself, you change the playing field. No one else will work as hard as you will to improve the quality of life for your citizens. And I hope that Next Century Cities can provide you with resources and assistance to smooth your way. You're the right people, this is the right time, and I look forward to watching your progress over time. Thank you.
Anybody have a question for Deb while we got her? Okay, thank you so much, Deb. Very, very nice.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Our next speaker is Kevin Schoen, if I'm saying that right, CEO of ACD.net, which operates fiber and telecommunications networks throughout the Great Lakes States region. His company provides gigabit fiber optic services to residential, business, governmental, and other telecommunications service providers. Kevin has a network engineering and design background and is experienced in the deployment of all aspects of internet and telecommunications infrastructure. Kevin has raised venture funding for several companies, and is also experienced in the legal and regulatory environment of modern internet and telecommunication systems. Kevin?
Thank you. I think I'd like this microphone. Hello, everybody. Things I'd like to cover today, I mean, there's several key, you've got some extremely good presenters here today, and I think I'll highlight some of the key things that we see go wrong and go right when investing in network infrastructure. Ultimately, the most successful projects we have seen are ones where there's co-investment with private sector entities. Generally, governments are extremely good at getting infrastructure built. And me being from Michigan, if you've ever driven on the roads, they're not necessarily always the best at maintaining that infrastructure at a very cost-effective and efficient manner. The kind of key calculus that is often forgot when fiber networks are being deployed is fiber is only one portion of the major expense. There's a lot of employee overhead and a lot of high-end employees that are needed to run large and extensive fiber to the home projects and fiber to the business projects. So obviously, if you just simply are only providing the raw fiber to which you're going to allow other businesses to connect to, that problem goes away to some extent. But as with everything, what a lot of municipalities initially get into when looking at fiber infrastructure is, it's just like buying a car. The first year you buy a car, you're pretty likely to have no problems. And maybe the second and third and fourth year, you're also having no problems because there's not much wear and tear, damage, or degradation to that car in the initial years. The key question is what happens 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and if you take your investment cycle over a 10 or 15 or 20 year or 30 year time frame, and you don't really heavily invest in preventative maintenance, you're going to be looking at a financial shortfall down the road. So the key aspect that I think is important is it's true that the investment is not going to need to be heavily maintained in the first couple of years, but certainly once 10 years goes down the road and that fiber's hanging in the wind, and inevitably a lot of the fiber optic infrastructure, as Corning mentioned, is made out of plastic. Well, you know, plastic doesn't last forever, and it degrades fairly rapidly, particularly if it's installed in exterior environments. So I think the key thing is to really, when service providers like us are building networks, we really look at how quickly are we going to recover that investment. We try to make that investment cycle relatively short. And some of the communities put these things on a 20-year cycle as opposed to a 5 or 10-year cycle and really end up getting burned. So what our company does is we both build networks. So we build networks for cities, and then they use those networks for themselves. We also build them for schools, and we also build networks for telecommunication firms. So one of the major areas of expansion of fiber networks that's being driven in Ohio and certainly the Midwest is the expansion of the cellular network is requiring fiber optic infrastructure. So in a number of cities in Ohio, we have about 500 or 600 miles of infrastructure we're going to be building over the next couple of years, principally around Columbus, Akron, Ohio, and in Toledo and a bunch of other small and medium towns such as Marion, and and there's a bunch of other small towns like that. What's driving that fiber build into those communities is the necessity to deploy wireless infrastructure. I thought it was interesting, a lot of the tweeting that's actually occurring is probably occurring over cell phones. And small antennas are being placed onto utility poles and light poles, and the big cell towers that exist out there today are a relic of the past. The only way that additional wireless bandwidth can get to cell phones is by the deployment of antennas that are much closer to your device. And in order to reuse the spectrum efficiently, those distributed antenna systems or small cell systems are driving fiber into communities. So as we build those networks out, our fiber infrastructure, and those antennas are backhauled via fiber optics. They don't want to use their precious spectrum to pull that bandwidth off of the antenna. So as we build out these fiber networks, our business model is to build that infrastructure for the cellular carriers, and literally within every 2 to 3 city blocks in urban environments, we'll have fiber down each street. So the next step for ACD is to take that fiber optic cable, which is within 2 to 3 city blocks of every home, is to extend that fiber, those fiber lines, into people's homes and small businesses. So kind of the minimum speeds that we provide are at a gig. You know, we kind of look at the models that Chattanooga and some other municipal fiber entities go with, and you know, we're kind of wondering, why don't they just start out at kind of like the baseline capacity of what fiber can handle, which is a gigabit. So a lot of that is because the continuous investment cycle necessary beyond just building the fiber network, if you're going to start providing services to residences and businesses, is that investment cycle in equipment is really on a 3 to 5 year time frame. So it's not like you're just going to spend a bunch of money at the city and then everything's going to work great. It's more of a continuous, non-stop capital investment, and that equation needs to be separated from the municipal financing function to some extent, so that you know. So the other kind of thing that I would really be careful with when looking at building networks, sometimes cities build networks and they operate a service provider, and they hook up all the businesses, they hook up all the hospitals and schools and the governmental entities, and then they come to a company and they say, hey, we want you to build fiber to the home. And a fiber to the home provider, building fiber to the home is among the most difficult part of the equation, because there's not as much revenue coming in from the residential customer, and there's a lot more support with thousands of residential customers as opposed to maybe a 100 or a couple hundred businesses. You gotta have much larger call centers, you have to have much more equipment, bucket trucks and splice trailers, and essentially it's a much lower margin business. So the thing that I would caution you about, if you're going after kind of just the backbone type of network, is to a large extent when we go into cities and we look at making those types of fiber to the home investments, is if we can also serve the businesses and the residences, that makes the equation for financial return much more likely. But sometimes cities have already kind of monopolized that portion of the business, and then they ask us to do only the hard work, right? Only the least profitable customers. And usually in those situations, we kind of pass on the investment in that market, because it doesn't make sense to us. Now there's times when the municipality has a lot of excess infrastructure that's available for our use that can kind of re-energize that equation, but it's something you need to be aware of, is government investment to some extent is going to displace providers' incentives to go after the lower revenue type customers, the low income areas of a city, or the harder to reach customers of the city. So that's one kind of cautionary thing that you need to keep an eye on. So many times what's happened also with various municipalities, and we're headquartered out of Michigan, but we're building a lot of stuff in Ohio, so I'll use some Michigan cities we can give you examples of. Eaton Rapids, Michigan, Dowagiac, Michigan, a lot of other mid-sized towns in Michigan built fiber optics principally to provide access to industrial parks and office parks, right? And they built that fiber out, and they kind of connected up those business entities, and then after a number of years, they figured out, heck, we're not really good at keeping up with the latest and greatest technologies and updating our routers and switches and keeping all that stuff operational. So a lot of times what happens is, as these networks go, they kind of, we've taken over management and or operational maintenance of those fiber networks over time. You know, I would really, the other kind of equation is you really need to make sure you do your math, right? This is a very, very dangerous business, and I think it's a lot more dangerous than what some of the other presenters project. And one way to kind of gauge that is, and trust me, I'm one of the scrappy guys. I've been fighting Comcast and Time Warner and those companies since I was born. I started out, you know, as a small dial-up ISP, and I clawed my way in, you know, those guys use the regulatory environment, the lobbying of government, the manipulation of public policy as a barrier and disincentive to other competitors entering the market, whether it's a private provider like us, or whether it's a private provider like us or other entities that partner with municipal governments to provide services, or whether it's just a municipal government to do it. And ultimately, you know, governments, a philosophical function of government is to do what the private sector will not, right? It doesn't make sense for businesses to invest in certain things, and certainly the challenges in rural markets are a little more extensive due to the lower density of customers per mile of fiber that needs to be built. You know, take it from that context. But what you really need to understand is, if you're going to start lighting that fiber, it now becomes a very rapid business, which is sometimes less prone to governmental management, right? In our business, we make investment decisions very quickly. We're very rapid at deploying, and so if you want to do a municipal network, you need to try to blend both of those equations together effectively. Whether it's with a partnership with a private entity, or you've got some very smart people within government that are granted the latitude to make those investment decisions with certainty. Now, the other kind of thing that I've seen that's gone wrong in municipally funded networks is lack of transparency on the financial costs, right? As Greg Dunn mentioned, there's been sometimes bribes, and there's been sometimes lack of bidding. You really need to make sure that you stay on the conservative side, not politically, but financially, on the conservative side of the equation. Because in the technology business, if it can go wrong, it almost certainly will. The road is littered with dead telecom companies, and that's the path that my company has paved, is, going in and taking out, undercutting competitors, and it's a rough market out there. And, in some cities, we've gone in and we've needed to build networks for some of our telecommunication customers to do cellular site backhaul, or for businesses, and we go into the market, and this is a very important concept for you to also stay on top of, is if you're going to put government dollars to work, you need to make sure that it's fully transparent, and that there's no economic cost that you're incurring upon the private sector entities that you're not also equally incurring onto the public sector entities. So, for example, in all of the states we operate in, we contribute a substantial cost equation that we have when going into a market, is the capital investment in that market and the taxes and fees to utilize the right of way, right? So inherently, a governmental entity doesn't necessarily have to pay itself a right of way utilization fee or a franchise fee, but the private sector entities generally are required to pay fees to maintain the right of way and those taxes or fees to governments. And so what's really important is to try and take into account, well, if this was a private sector entity, would we be paying a bunch of fees and and taxes that we are not otherwise paying when we do this as a municipal entity? So I think that's an important equation on ensuring that the math is fair, right? So in some markets, when we went into them, we would run into occasional municipal fiber or municipal broadband entities, and we would go to permit fiber, and these entities, rather than being controlled by the city manager or the mayor, kind of become an entity upon itself with a separate board of directors and a separate kind of like, you know, mindset that's not necessarily purely geared for improving the community. They're kind of more in the, you know, I want to protect my job mode and protect my revenue base mode. So we would go into these municipalities and on occasion, and we would tell them, hey, we would like to build fiber. We've got to build fiber to do some other work for our telecommunications or wireless customers, or some of our corporate customers, or some of the entities that have big buildings here and they need to get fiber to other cities, so we need to build fiber in your city. And we'd go in there and we'd ask for permits, and then, you know, they would jack up the fees, and we're like, why are you jacking up the fees, you know? And, well, because you're gonna be competing with our municipal broadband company. We're like, okay, well, you know, that then kind of creates an environment where other providers stop investing in those markets. And the best thing you can have if you're building a municipal broadband company is a whole bunch of other people coming in, right? Your job is to engender competition and to create additional competition. And if the municipal broadband company is extremely good and extremely capable, wonderful. And but you shouldn't create an environment that disincents additional economic investment, because usually what businesses want and usually what residences want is a lot of choices, right? And that's where innovation comes in. Everybody's got to get smarter. Everybody's got to give a better and better price in order to engender those, in order to try to get customers and keep customers. So don't see this as you want to take over a market. See it as we would like to provide an additional entity to create competition to enhance the likelihood that our businesses and residences are going to have more choice. And so I think competition generation should be at the mindset of why municipalities enter into this, because you know, that I think that's just kind of a key thing that people should continue to pay attention to. We partner often, most of the time, we're partnering with municipal entities when we build fiber networks in there, whether we're just providing some additional fibers on infrastructure we're already building, or there's existing networks and we're managing those. And I think guys like Greg Dunn, they've been through the meat grinder of trying to figure out how do we make sure that we create an environment where technology is going to spread, and how do we take the best components of government and the best components of the private sector and make sure that we have a better and better broadband infrastructure for our entities. So I don't know how we're doing on time, but I know that we got a couple more. Okay, great. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yes?
I understand dealing with whether you're going to serve just certain nodes in the community or every resident, but we're not just interconnecting within the community. Where does the cable end? How does it interconnect with the rest of the world?
So that's inherently where additional investment is going to be required that is external to the community. The first kind of phase of investment that companies like ours make historically have been in long-haul markets to connect together the cities. So fiber lines may need to be purchased, or capacity on fiber lines may need to be purchased that come out of this municipality to additional areas to connect at a low-cost manner into other providers. So that's an expense that you need to try to make sure you calculate into your equations. And obviously there's entities in Ohio that do that already for educational entities like Ornet or others. So there's sometimes partnerships that can be brought there. And that's kind of a very key kind of cost equation that needs to be added into the overall expense. Yes, sir.
This may be an unfair question because you don't have a lot of time to answer, but can
Sure.
you lay out the functional elements that are necessary for a community to provide broadband service to a community? So we can kind of start thinking about, well, that might, you might want to do that element this way and this element that way.
So I think the key on this stuff is, first, really be careful about defining the scope. Because what people have a network that's built for the business district is far different than networks that are built for residential customers. With residential networks, you're going to be putting in a whole lot of splice points, a lot of storage loops, a lot of router switches that are going to aggregate those customers into cabinets and huts that are within the neighborhood. And this is a key thing I would mention to cities as well. If you want to get somebody to help do fiber to the home or do it in partnership, the key thing for us in most private sector entities, just like Google or ACDs of the world or other fiber to the home providers, is very, very clear rules and cost structures in order to deploy that necessary aggregation equipment. Like some communities say to us, we don't want any equipment along our right of way. We don't want to see any huts or cabinets or anything like that. And that becomes a very difficult thing because we're like, well, we can't run networks without some network equipment here and there, So those discrete elements that you got to put in, routers, switches, and fiber, are I can't kind of answer all those, but there's a laundry list of network elements down to lasers and customer premise equipment that have all got to be researched. Yep. Yes, sir.
So the fiber only runs to the hut. From there it goes to your routers and switches, and the rest of that's copper.
Correct. So, no, the fiber will go straight to the home, and a box will be in the home that accepts the fiber, and usually within that home, copper wire will be run to your individual computers. Now that copper wire, since it's very short range, can easily run a gigabit or even 10 gigabit.
Does that mean like cable modem, for example, goes?
Correct. Yep. Great. Thanks for your time, everybody.
Thank you, Kevin. Now we have an example of a community actively doing fiber to the home and to the business. Jeremy Piazzoli, butchered his name I think, lives in Sandy, Oregon with his wife and 3 young children. His professional background is in network engineering and designing fiber connectivity for schools, cities, libraries, and other public agencies in Clackamas County. He has been serving in Sandy for the past 11 years on the SandyNet board, 2 years on the city's planning commission, 8 years on the city council. He has been instrumental in educating the city council on the importance of fiber to every home and business, and has worked hard to keep fiber continually at the top of the city's goals. He also serves on the board of directors for the Northwest Access Exchange, Portland's public internet exchange. I give you Jeremy.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I didn't see anybody out there. To see a video, but now the video went away, so.
Sorry.
We can hear you, but we can't see you, Jeremy.
Okay.
Pardon me, folks? I don't know where I lost it.
You see me though?
Yeah, I know, but I lost his video all of a sudden.
Change the role again, back.
Yeah.
Or are you able to see me?
No, one moment.
Okay.
I lost his video.
Can we reconnect?
Bear with me. Let's see here.
Especially at this moment.
Yeah. Jeremy, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Tim, I don't know.
Is there a window off screen that you can?
No, sorry, everybody. Jeremy, can you share your desktop? Or share your screen?
I think,
There we go. Thank you so much.
Jeremy, you're on, you're back.
all right, well, I'll go ahead and start. Hopefully you can see me there. Sorry, I have a little bit of a cold, so my voice is a little bit raspier today. But Tim had asked me if I would just share my story about Sandy and what we've done in Sandy. To give you a little bit of background of myself, I'm a network engineer by trade, and so I build complicated networks for schools and libraries and cities and which is just a lot more complicated than doing it for the city as an ISP. Actually, ISPs are actually really simple to run. And it doesn't take really, like Deb mentioned earlier, really anyone with my background to do it. It takes a lot of passion though, and I recommend, looking at this, you have passionate people that can spearhead this and lead it on. So I started off being asked to be on the SandyNet board. The SandyNet board was started about 13 years ago. The city tried to get DSL, Sandy did, dial-up, and they went to the local telco, and DSL was not even available. They had no ability to get high-speed internet at that time, and it's not in your area. The city council at that time said, you know what, we're going to dry up as a town if we do not do something about this. So at that time, they formed and became a municipal ISP. The city started offering DSL service, but shortly realized that there was a lot of limitations to DSL. There were distance limitations, as well as speed limitations, and then also having to work with incumbent telephone provider to be able to put that data across their lines. At that time, the local provider said, "Oh, I guess people out in Sandy really do want high-speed internet," and they put in their own DSLAM device that allows you to offer DSL over the telephone line. And great, we've done our job, we succeeded. We can just fade off into the distance, and they've now taken over and will provide that service. But what happened was we just decided to let it run in its course, and people started calling City Hall saying, "Hey, I just moved into Sandy," and I called the telephone company and say, "Sorry, we don't have any capacity. Try calling back in 3 months." Well, we had a lot of irate people going, "I just moved here and I need the internet to be able to do my job," or livability type things. And so we said, "Oh, well, we still have DSL. You can hop on our network, and by the way, it's cheaper and faster." So that's just how we grew. We never really did advertise, but we did realize that the DSL was ran its course quickly, and we couldn't get everywhere. So we started a WISP, a wireless ISP, on top of it. We put out wireless devices around the city. We didn't do like a lot of other cities where we just offered it for free. It wasn't sustainable. And if you noticed wireless ISPs around the nation, where they just started doing it for free, and Oregon was one of them, they quickly died off because there wasn't money to sustain that. The technology changes quite fast, as you noticed. The demands were increased quite a bit. We ran wireless across our entire city. So it was a really grassroots effort. My house, I got married and we built this really nice house my wife designed, and I porcupined the house with all these antennas on it. And a quarter of the city of Sandy's internet came through my laundry room. My wife wasn't too happy about that, but we had it working. In fact, there's been several occasions when she walked out of the bedroom and saw these guys in orange vests in our laundry room, because that's where the router and devices were going, and, oh, hi, Joe, you were here. And so, that's just what we did. It was a grassroots effort, and it was about the community and about getting the internet to our residents. It was about livability. If we didn't do this, our city, our neighbors, just wouldn't stay here. They would go 12 miles west to a town of 100,000, somewhere, they did have BIOS, and they did have internet speeds that people were looking for. So, but as we continue to grow, we did a health check on our network, on our wireless infrastructure, and realized, we're getting pretty clogged up, that our pipes to our homes, the transport, the wireless to each of the houses, were getting filled up and clogged up because the demand of the broadband, the internet, was increasing, especially with Netflix and other things like students were using Google Docs and things like that. So the prescription was to add more fiber. We need fiber to clean out our pipes. And so we did that. We started looking at fiber to the home projects. And that was about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we started doing that. We built this really slow at the time because the technology had been changing quite rapidly. We did a program called Why Wait for Google. Google had announced that, you sign up, write your little why, we should come to your neighborhood and your town and run King Fiber. And that was a great idea. The problem is a town of 10,000 that Sandy, Oregon was, we were not going to be able to attract Google. And so we just knew that would be the case. And so we did a little Facebook marketing. It's about the only marketing we've ever done is just on Facebook. Why wait for Google? So we had people start signing up. They did their fiberhood project to do a pilot project. Okay, we'll do a pilot project and see how that works and and get the costs. But in a town of 10,000 and about 4,000 homes, the pilot project didn't really work out financially. What we realized was the cost was going to be higher than what we wanted there, and then be able to charge back to our customers. And so we were trying to keep our price for the home cheap as possible. And we had set ourselves some benchmarks that we wanted to hit. But we did realize during that process that if we were to build out the entire city at the same time, we'd have a lot of cost savings. It would cost a little bit more than a pilot project that we were doing, about 600 homes, but we would have a huge cost savings, and we knew we were going to go into the whole city anyways, because helping you build one section of your town and say, oh, you have this, so you're the haves, and now you have all the have-nots. It wasn't politically smart, and financially, we believe it was cheaper to do the entire city at 10,000. We have a lot of advantages of being a smaller community because towns, when you start getting the size of Portland, Oregon, 500,000, 600,000 people, it becomes very hard to do because the cost it's so much more. To do that, it becomes harder politically. So towns of 10,000, 40,000, 50,000, 4,000 are just so much easier to do. Now, I hope to point out that we are not an electric utility. We do not have electric utility. We're very unique. A lot of cities and communities do have that, and that's a great asset, and we would have loved to have that. It would have saved us millions of dollars. It would be completely 100% underground. And we're supposed to do that. We don't own the pole. And, but we also realize that, you have storms and you have other things that may happen. And we don't want to send our guys out there in bucket trucks. They could be standing on the ground doing the work. We have a lot of areas that are underground. So it makes sense for us to put everything underground. Now, if we were an electric utility, most likely would have put the poles and that we could have saved, a lot of money that way. So we looked at doing public-private partnerships. And we ended up signing 2 different ones, and it just didn't work out. You know, what we were trying to do for our community was make this not only an economic development aspect of it, but a livability. And one of those things was keeping the price as low as possible and giving the highest quality service that we could. So in looking at the different public-private partnerships, we had some great partners, but at the end of the day, it was about the dollar for them and what that meant for them, and being able to jack their rates up and really demanding what kind of service they wanted them to provide through us. And it wasn't as high as quality as we had wanted. So in looking at, we knew how to run an ISP. ISPs are actually very easy to run. And we've been doing that for a while already. So we just couldn't come to terms. And so the first company got bought out by another company. And in that company, we still had the same issues. We ended up parting ways, and we decided to just do a traditional build on our own. We got revenue bonds to do that. The way we fund ourselves is through revenue bonds that only the people taking the service are actually paying for those revenue bonds. We started building here last June, and we'll be finishing up this June, completing all the fiber to the home projects. We already ran by all of our businesses several years ago. We run now, have conduit throughout our community, running past 100% of our homes and businesses. We're doing free installations, AC, wireless router, no contracts and no bandwidth caps. So we're doing that all for different tier plans. We have a $39.95 a month for 100 megs up and down, and a gig for $59.95 a month up and down. And that's those price points that we wanted to hit. We wanted our lowest tier to be more than $39.95 a month. So that's what we fought for and drove for. In our revenue bonds, we took out a 20-year revenue bond, and we believe that we will be able to pay that off in 10 years. So there's a lot of profit being made in that. And so, you know, we're doing this for economic development and livability. Not to have houses in Hawaii and driving Lamborghinis. So, you know, people are the ones that own our system. Our citizens do, not shareholders. Our shareholders are our citizens. So their main concern is to make sure that we pay for the system, and that's enough to be able to expand our system, but we do not need to be charging more than that. And so that's how we run. I want to point out when quality of life. When we first brought our fiber, it started doing our first ribbon cutting. We did our first ribbon cutting. We did it in a park. And in this park, we brought a lot of people together. And in my talk at that park, the ribbon cutting, it was kind of emotional. It was like, here, 100 years ago or so, people were getting together to see the first house get power, or the first house to get telephone in our community. And we're looking back and like, what great leaders we had back then that made the sacrifices to be able to do that. And now at that point in time, we were making the first fiber splice to a park, the houses around that park and our community, the first one to be able to splice that fiber and have gig fiber. You know, what will my grandkids say in 50 years going, wow, you know, amazing, we're so glad, you know, our grandpa, you know, went through and made this commitment to bring gig fiber at that time. In 50 years, you know, it could be a 100 gig connection, because that fiber will be the same fiber in 50 years as it is today, but the electronics on the ends that will change. So, kind of like our power lines that we put in place a long time ago, we're bringing economic and livability for our community. So to wrap it up, the city of Sandy wasn't going to do this, no one was. Our incumbent providers were not going to come and bring fiber to our home. They did it, you know, 12 12 miles away at a count of 100,000. But they were never going to come to our town. At that time, we were about 6,000 or 7,000. We're now about 10,000 residents. Net didn't happen overnight. We did grow it over time. It had a lot of passion from grassroots people like myself and other members of the community that said, we're going to make this happen and we'll make the community thrive. Net also used almost every type of technology there was to provide internet to the home. It would provide it all. If we were to start today, it would be so much nicer. We would start with fiber because, why go to those lower archaic models? Some people will say, hey, why don't we just do wireless? It's cheaper, and wireless has a limitation. The limitation is getting increased, but nothing's been invented faster than the speed of light. So fiber will always be faster, and cell towers and sorts, they're all being provided by fiber, or will be if they aren't currently, because they still need a fiber connection to be able to offer those services. The other thing is SandyNet pays for itself, not being paid by the residents that aren't taking the service, only paid for by the people there. And I read in an article here a few months ago that millennials outnumber baby boomers for the first time. That's a huge impact. If you look at millennials, 18 to 34 years old, they haven't really experienced a life without the internet. They go off to college, they have a gig in their dorm rooms already. They move back home to mom and dad's house and go, look at this. I can't live here. It's ridiculous. I can't stream my Netflix and that type of thing and get on and chat around the world. I can't do my work. And so we looked at it as also, we didn't want to lose a generation because they can move to another town where they could have the internet speeds that they needed and actually demanded. So millennials they expect these things to be a part of their life and don't understand when it's not available. And so going through college, they had that already. Now to go away from it is very hard to do. We didn't want to lose those type of demographics in our neighborhoods. So I ask you this question: when is internet at your home going to be like water and electricity? You treat the internet as a utility. When you turn on the water in your kitchen, you don't yell around the house to say, "Don't brush your teeth" or "Flush the toilet because I need to wash the dishes." My wife doesn't yell down the stairs and say, "Can you shut off the fridge? I need to do the laundry," or "Can you shut off the lights? I want to turn on the furnace because I'm cold." Why would anyone want to do that with their internet? Hey, son, can you stop watching your Netflix cartoon so I can get to work? Or have you stopped, or having to stop your home work while the computer takes an hour to download that OS update? They're only going to want to sit there and watch a spinning wheel for 30 minutes to an hour. With fiber, it can be done in, a minute, depending on what file you're trying to load. Apple came out with a 4 or 5 gig OS update. How long is that going to take you, and how much of your bandwidth cap are you going to lose for just downloading an OS? That same file I can download in under 4 minutes. So now you that out by 3 or 4 of your machines. So I ask you, is that gig fiber, it's a quality of life and economic development tool that you can use in your community. It isn't ours. So, anyways, any questions you might have?
Any questions for Jeremy?
What was the hardest question from the city council, or Barry, or from the city council that they had to answer, because he was tied to that?
Yeah, okay, so the question is, what was the
Hardest challenge?
the most difficult challenge in working this through your city council and getting buy-in on your local government?
Great question. So in our community, I came on city council 9 years ago. I'm a sitting councilor now, but we started this project more than before that with wireless and as an ISP. But it started the process 5 years ago, and we changed council members during that time. But I have to say, we had 100% unanimous voting whenever it came up with fiber. I think a lot of it, one, I helped educate the council on what fiber meant. They could see I was quite passionate about it. But it was just bringing out the facts, bringing out what this could do and change in our community. We had very supportive staff, a staff that believed in us and believed that we could do this in the community. So I think the biggest challenge was always, it's going to be price. How much is this going to cost? But when we ran the numbers and could prove and show that, we could pay for this, and not only pay for it, look at paying it in half the amount of time, it just made sense. So, we have a very diverse council, some liberal, conservative, and so, but I want to say, this is a nonpartisan type of an issue. This is about livability and economic issue. And in our council, we were able to do that. And we put it on this 3 different times because we had a couple that private public one kind of went away because it just didn't work out. We had a unanimous vote every single time. So it was quite easy as far as that went. And I think we had a smart phone call. I do want to also point out our take rates. We are just hoping and praying that we get a 35% take rate on our fiber. The take rate is always the question, what are you going to have? I want to say today we have 53% take rate in climbing still. We're not even done with the project.
What level of staffing do you have in your municipality to maintain this?
The question is, what level of staffing do you maintain in your municipality in order to effectively maintain the fiber?
Great question. So we have, start off with, when we started our ISP, we didn't have any IT staff in the city at all. A small city, you can't really afford to have a full-time IT staff member. At we go to the ISP, we ended up getting 1 full-time staff. Then we added a second, and 3 people. We have 3 full-time staff members. We do have an intern, who we hire a high school intern that gets paid really well and for being in high school and works after school. But what we're finding is that to run our wireless system. Wireless systems can be very more complex, a lot more problematic. And what we've noticed is we roll our existing wireless customers onto our fiber network. Our support calls go way, 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 way down. And so relieving that burden off of our support staff. Those 3 people and that intern also mainly run the ISP, but a benefit to the city is that now we have that expertise of individuals that then also can make up and help out with doing internal IT department for the city. So a city of our size has an IT department where other cities around us don't have an IT department. They will hire out for a couple days a month to have someone come in and fix their computers and run their servers. So that's a nice side effect of having an ISP, is a municipal ISP.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. I don't think we have any questions. Okay, we're still running about a half hour late, and we have lunches out there, I think, for everybody. But we have one more speaker, our own Thor Sage, who's the Executive Director of the Miami Valley Educational Computer Association, a regional council of governments and provider of technology shared services. to schools, governments, and nonprofit organizations in the Miami Valley. Thor has over 25 years of technical project management and administrative experience and has overseen a large number of network infrastructure projects. He has successfully assisted many schools and agencies in developing efficient and effective technological implementations and programs, and has made building and supporting strong not-for-profit enterprises an emphasis in his career. MVECA currently manages a local data center right across the hall from us here, and a wide area network that spans 6 counties and is made up of both privately and publicly owned fiber optic resources.
All right, well, I would just like to thank all the presenters today. Fantastic job. I hope everyone would agree with me that this was not a program, and the presenters that were selected were not biased in one way or another. These are complex issues. The idea here is that we must wrap our heads around the issues and get more familiar with the lingo so that we can have meaningful conversations about whether or not we're going to take a progressive move towards addressing our technological future, okay? So, MVECA. You know, at the top of my slide there it says Yellow Springs Factors for Success, and I happen to be the executive director at MVECA, the Miami Valley Educational Computer Association. We're a not-for-profit, publicly owned internet service provider for 25 school districts and a number of other governmental and agencies. We're the internet service provider for Antioch College, for WYSO, and we were established in 1980. And we really specialize in technology shared services for education, government, and nonprofit organizations, okay? And we are a regional council of governments, and I think that that is an important feature of MVECA. Regional council of governments, as defined by the Ohio Revised Code, can do a bunch of things. But here are some very important things. They can study area governmental problems common to 2 or more members of the council, and they can promote cooperative agreements among its members and other agencies of local or state governments, whether or not within Ohio, and the federal government. And they can make recommendations for review and action to the members of other public agencies. And finally, they can promote cooperative agreements and contracts among its members or other governmental agencies and private persons, corporations, or agencies, okay? So the very nature of a regional council of government, which is what MVECA is to forge partnerships and facilitate collaboration. So, factors for success. As you may have picked up, owning our own municipal electrical utility is a big deal when it comes to fiber deployment. Engineering and make-ready costs would be minimized if the village were to opt to take on a municipal fiber network project. I think that the village would expect to give itself a break on attachment fees and reduce construction costs and limit ongoing costs. I can't say enough about this. I know that the one-time initial engineering costs on other projects that MVECA has taken on for fiber build have been significant. The engineering and make-ready costs in order to prepare poles and work with, say, pole owners in the instances where they're power companies or AT&T's, Dayton Power and Light, AT&T, Ohio Edison, all of these folks they add a lot of time to your project, they add a lot of expense to your project, they charge you sometimes extreme amounts of money, extremely large amounts of money in order to complete a fiber project. It doesn't stop people from taking on fiber projects, but in this instance I think that is a real benefit to Yellow Springs, the potential of the Yellow Springs fiber initiative. And then of course, there's an existing data center and network infrastructure right here in your town, and that is MVECA, okay? We have redundant and robust internet connections. We do server hosting, we manage networks, we have managed voice solutions, we have managed wireless solutions, and we already manage significant numbers of fiber resources in the region. So this is our little corner of the world, okay? And you can see Yellow Springs right up there. And so this is kind of some of the resources that MVECA can bring to the table. First off, the data center. As you've heard, that's a big deal. One of our presenters said, this should be about bringing more competition, to the community, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. And MVECA is your local outlet for bringing those competitors to the table. We are currently served, let's see here, well, we currently serve a 6-county region. We have a network that supports over 57,000 school children. We go all the way as far south as Hillsborough. We're taking care of Fayette County and portions of Madison County. We have currently 3 robust internet connections. We have a 10 gig connection to the Ohio Academic Research Network, 10 gig. We have a 1 gig connection to Time Warner, and this is not your traditional residential grade connection. This is a connection into the Time Warner cloud for direct internet access. And then we have a 1 gig connection that goes through the AT&T cloud. Now, this is, these are robust fiber connections that actually come right into this building, okay? I've heard the comment that Yellow Springs is fiber starved and that there's not enough infrastructure to really sustain the back end of a municipal fiber infrastructure, and I would argue strongly against that. We also have a dark fiber path up to the Next Edge Business Park, the technology park up in Springfield, where Avitech, or they're now called ATIC, is located. Yes.
Dark fiber.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, and thank you for stopping me. So, in the industry, a lot of times we say dark fiber as opposed to lit fiber. Dark fiber is something that you get to control. You get to choose which electronics go on the end of it, and you get to manage and maintain those network connections across a dark fiber connection. Lit fiber tends to be what you have to lease from a Time Warner, who they light it for you, and then they just give you a cable to plug into your switch. Okay, and in every instance, in all of the school districts we take care of, it's the dark fiber that we're really striving for, because then we're masters of our own destiny in those instances. So, so we have a fiber connection to the Next Edge Business Park up in Springfield, and the Ornet is located there. A number of other service providers are there, and that is a really great opportunity for us to reach out and touch the rest of the world. Okay, but beyond and as a result of our work with Avitech or ATIC up at the Next Edge Business Park, we're able to actually work on providing service to the city of Springfield, and we're actually working with the city of Springfield right now to try and other stakeholders in the city of Springfield to try and work out an arrangement where we can actually provide service across that fiber path out through Avitech and then out to all the stakeholders in that area. We're hoping for a lot of movement on that project in the coming months, and we're very excited about the opportunity to work with the city of Springfield. In addition to that, though, from Avitech, there are paths available to get us all the way to another extremely modern data center in the Columbus area. So ultimate, and this data center, I can't remember the new name. They actually,
CoLogic.
Yeah, CoLogics. Thank you so much. This data center is known as what they call a carrier hotel. So if we can establish a connectivity all the way to one of these large, extremely robust data centers, we can bring every service provider imaginable right here to Yellow Springs, okay? And that is a particular goal of mine, because right now, I spend about $65,000 to $70,000 a month paying Time Warner bills, a month, just to take care of our network, okay? The more service providers we can get into our data center, the more I can help schools, and then of course, the more I can help other client organizations of MVECA, including the Village of Yellow Springs. So, MVECA was recently funded on a local government innovation fund loan for $500,000 to build a network in Wilmington, Ohio. This is a big deal to us because what we've done is we've gone out with the assistance of Vice Miller. We've gone out and we've forged a partnership between the county government, the city government, the Clinton County Port Authority, the Wilmington City Schools, and MVECA in order to do a collaborative fiber project. This is the key to success. It's about collaboration, it's about working together, and we feel very optimistic about our opportunities to build network down in Wilmington. And we also have another initiative in Greene County. And we are hoping to assist various stakeholders in Greene County to interconnect communities and to build additional publicly owned fiber optic infrastructure that can benefit everybody and reduce ongoing costs for government and education for the foreseeable future. And finally, we're continuing to try to forge partnerships with private carriers. And I'm not really talking about the Time Warners or AT&Ts. I'm talking about the ACDs and the ComNets out there. These new companies that are willing to partner and willing to play ball and to do things like collaborative fiber build, you know, and to work with education and government in order to reach their business goals while at the same time helping local governments achieve their local connectivity goals. So over time, I think we're going to see many more opportunities to get a foothold on some of these additional fiber pathways that can benefit everyone in the region. One notable thing about our Wilmington project and some of these other pathways that are out there is that there's a big push for investment in publicly owned infrastructure right now as a result of some of the things that are going on at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, at Springfield Air National Guard Base, at the Wilmington Airfield. By the way, the Clinton County Port Authority, who is part of our Local Government Innovation Fund partnership, is going to be a beneficiary of a robust fiber connection that MVECA will assist in the maintenance of, the ongoing maintenance of. That's going to be a big deal. We feel like that fiber run, once we have it built, is going to have a lot of value. Because you don't just run 2 strands of fiber or some minimum numbers of fibers to serve one customer. You tend to build as much fiber as you possibly can, or increase the strand count when you're doing the fiber construction at a very small additional cost, so that in the future you can then monetize the excess capacity. And this is an important thing that hasn't necessarily been talked about. If, say, you own a piece of fiber and it runs past a lot of places that maybe are not your customers or your constituents, and a service provider would like to come in and provide service to a client organization somewhere along that line, you have an opportunity to then lease strands of fiber to a service provider or to another municipality. There's a lot of potential for monetizing fiber optic infrastructure. So, factors for success. I think that building publicly owned infrastructure is a way to achieve cost controls and to be a master of your own destiny. I think public-private partnerships are critical. I think public-public partnerships are critical too. I think governments, schools, municipalities all need to stick together. Collaboration with other communities, economic development. I think that our other speakers have done a great job with speaking to that today. Public ownership of critical resources is something that I believe strongly in. I don't think that we should, I think the superintendent of schools here in Yellow Springs tends to talk about technology access as the new civil right, okay? I'm not really prepared to allow Time Warner to control my access to my technological future. And then local innovation. I think that we do have a very innovative community, and I think that if we do come together and do choose to embark on a fiber optic infrastructure project, I think that we can do amazing things. And I think that the sky is really the limits. It's about how creative you can actually be. So that's it. And I hope that was quick enough. I know we've had a long morning. Does anybody have any questions for me? Yes, please.
What are the 6 counties that you serve?
Clinton, Fayette, Highland, Clark, Greene, Madison.
Other than lunch, which is obvious, what comes next?
That is an excellent question. Just to be clear, nothing is proposed, okay? There's no business proposal on the table at this time. That's what we need to work through now. I know that the Community Access Panel has been tasked with working with the SpringsNet group in order to bring some of this to light, come up with good ideas and business proposals, and I think that that's really the next place. And I would encourage anybody who's interested in ongoing participation to get in touch with the SpringsNet group and to perhaps attend the Community Access Panel meetings where we discuss this stuff monthly or more regularly. And yes, and if you would choose to hang around, we are going to be facilitating a brief exercise where we can get some additional information from you about what the logical next steps are from your perspective, okay? Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I think we have lunches out in the hallway. We're going to break into smaller groups and get feedback from everybody. And there's also a survey form out on the table out there if you take the time to fill it out. Or if you can't get to it, get to yellow-springs.net. There's also a way to contribute comments and concerns on that website. Thanks everybody for coming. I'd like to thank all the members of SpringsNet for all the help they've given me. And we hope to be updating you via email in the future about progress we've made. Thanks a lot.